Oh, if only one day I clicked the record button and caught you doing the things that you do prior to me going online, I could have this whole thing of bloopers of Hanok. Hanok Young, straight from the gym and online. Here we go, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, Mike, how are you? Things are great. Good to see you. Lots going on here. Wow. We've got traveling to do, but we need to talk about travel, and there's so many things going on.
In fact, while you were at the gym working on, is it Hanok 2.0 or 3 point something or
At this time, we don't know.
yeah, it's kind of like, are we going to, be lined up for Hanok 666 or 777? We'll figure that one out later on. Some people think that, that one of those numbers, but I won't tell you which one. Uh, while you were at the gym, okay, to get serious, there was an article published on Arut Sheva, Israel National News, that there is a possibility of Israel opening up for some travel, and you haven't even been able to have time to look into that yet.
No, actually, this has been trending in the last 2 weeks as Israel began opening up, which is only literally, like restaurants, for instance, opened a week ago Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
This is all brand new stuff. Israel has been piloting the use of a rapid COVID test that they've developed here in Israel. The idea would be that people traveling from abroad would have a COVID test prior to departing their home country, be retested by the Israeli rapid test upon arrival here, and then hopefully be able to begin traveling. There's even been rumors about allowing tourists in within another month.
Mm.
So all this news is fast breaking. I just got a very lengthy email from someone yesterday trying to figure out what the guidelines were. And as of right now, today, tourists still cannot come in. They're trying to figure out before our elections on Tuesday, getting Israelis back. There's a limit of 3,000 per day. There's some kind of bizarre exceptions committee, blah, 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 blah. But changes in the offing. And I really hope that people are beginning to walk, get your good walking or hiking shoes, get in shape, been saving your pennies and your shekels, so y'all can come to Israel and visit with me.
Well, it's I mean I'm as soon as they will let a tourist in, my plan is to book a flight, and I'm really kind of seeing with what's happening. It looks like the Supreme Court is not siding with a lot of the government stupidity. Maybe you could export that to this side of the Atlantic Ocean also. But if it looks like possibly after Pesach, they might be waiting until the Pesach rush to make sure that doesn't happen and then possibly open up. So that would be
Yeah.
an amazing thing. And
Yeah.
for those that are kind of waiting for everything, our plan for Hanok and myself is we've been doing this virtual tour, and thank you for those who've commented on it and are enjoying it. Well, we're planning on taking it to another level of Hanok and myself doing some travel in Israel with the camera, and do a virtual tour prior to a real tour that would happen, God willing, Bezrat Hashem, in October, November. So, Hanok, it
Yeah.
just so happens that the stop of the day that we were planning, there's some new news, which is really like really old news that's just happened recently, because the old news was someone buried something at Qumran. The new news is it's been found. So tell us about that.
Okay, really exciting news. It appears that the Israel Antiquities Authority, combined with a whole bunch of other groups here in Israel, has been secretly working on an amazing operation where they're literally rappelling down the side of sheer cliffs in the Judean mountains, Judean desert,
Hmm.
in an extensive operation to try to recover whatever artifacts have still to this date not been found. The problem is, of course, the Bedouin loot things, so it's a race against time. So having said that, just yesterday, literally 24 hours ago, they announced that in one of what's referred to as the Bar Kokhba caves,
Mhm.
the Bar Kokhba rebellion being between 132 and 135 in the Common Era, Jews were hiding in these caves in the desperate battle against the Roman Empire. Artifacts from the Bar Kokhba caves have been found in the past. What was found yesterday is brand new. It appears that they found multiple scraps of the prophet Zechariah, as it's pronounced in North Carolina, and Nahum, Nahum. I have no idea how to pronounce that in English.
Nahum.
Nahum. You say Nahum, I say tomato. Let's call the whole thing. Anyway, fascinating. It's written in Greek.
Hmm.
Now, was that from the Septuagint, the translation into Greek? You know, the academic world is going to, have a field day with this. What's most interesting to me about it is the fact that whenever Hashem's name, whenever God's name is mentioned, according to the articles, it says it was written in the ancient Hebrew script, quote unquote, which would indicate Paleo Hebrew.
Hmm.
But that remains to be seen. Very, very, very exciting, because our first stop, well, we'll talk about the Dead Sea in a moment, but we were going to be passing Qumran as we head south. Qumran is the area with a community nearby where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. These are pieces, or in some cases, whole segments of the entire Tanakh Hebrew Bible, with one exception.
Mhm.
Megillat Esther, the scroll of Esther, is not found. Why that might be is a topic of a whole nother conversation another day. But fascinatingly enough, these all correspond to what's referred to as the Masoretic text. In other words, the text of the Hebrew Bible that the Jewish people have been using to this very day. Now, the Qumran community, who are they? Were they, quote unquote, Essenes that Josephus spoke about? Was Yochanan HaMatbil, John the Immerser, the baptizer? Remember, folks, he was never a Baptist. John was never a Baptist. Mary was never a Catholic.
Wow.
Got to remember that.
You got it here first.
That's right. I hate to be, and Yeshua was never a Christian. I know. I'm just, heads are blowing up all over the world right now.
I heard that Paul converted, though. Actually, that was said to me one time. Yes, he converted to Christianity.
Okay.
I see in the writings that he did in Philippians, to take you off track for a moment. He never really stated that in his lineage. When he gave his pedigree, he went back to, I'm an Israelite of the tribe of Benjamin. So I just kind of think some of that's a little bit of a hooey, but we digress as we normally do.
Yes. So at Qumran in the caves, Now, these were found in the 1940s. Seriously, I mean, it was that recent. What's fascinating about it, I mean, there are a lot of things, but there's a great story of how they were originally found. Two Bedouin shepherd brothers are out there, you know, one of the sheep goes into the cave. And as brothers tend to do, you go get the sheep. No, I got the one last time. No, you go. No, I don't want to go. So finally, being incredibly lazy, one of them picks up a rock, throws it in the cave to scare the sheep out. Well, instead of going, bouncing off the floor of the cave or the walls of the cave, going thump, 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 it goes thump, thump, crack. Something broke. They go and they find these large clay jars and scrolls in a language that they can't decipher. The fact that they were totally illiterate in any language probably was more of a challenge. What happened to the scrolls is a whole fascinating story. And by the way, let me interject something. I got a number of really nice notes and comments about our, virtual trip to Masada last broadcast. And someone actually said, well, now that you've explained all of Masada, I don't have to waste my time and go and see it. So it's a good thing I was wearing a do-rag, because when my brain exploded, I was able to maintain most of it. Let me explain something to you really quickly. I touched upon the story. I gave you the highlights. It was what's called a teaser. Y'all haven't seen anything. I didn't describe the Roman siege walls, the siege camps that still stand 2,000 years later. Nothing. You didn't see the frescoes. You didn't see anything. You didn't see the cisterns. You haven't seen anything. So don't say that.
You'll
be upset.
I mean, I'm trying to come up with a good analogy here for that, because this is kind of like let's just sit down and eat and let's just look at the menu.
Exactly.
Now, are we going to order anything for dinner? No. Why would we do that? We've already seen the menu. Or, let's get the brochures. Let's order the brochures for Hawaii. But why would anybody ever want to go and actually, put their feet in the sand?
No.
I mean, yeah, go ahead before okay. I don't have a do-rag. Yeah. So
now there are other elements, other levels of Qumran, what may have been there. Was there buried temple treasure? Y'all just have to come with Mike and I and hear the whole story. So, and by the way, the dates, you mentioned it earlier, October 31st through December, I wish, November the 11th. Be there or be square.
We've extended it. We've extended the tour. People might have to get some extended vacation time. The scene, the area of Qumran that we're talking about is, and I've got a picture. Excuse me. I've got a picture up on the intro onto this whatever we do. And you at first look at it and you say, why would anyone in their right mind, or even close to their right mind, want to live in a place like that? You then visit Qumran and you ask that same question, but on a different level. It is hot. It is extremely hot. And then it's hotter than that. There's no rain, very little. Now, the topography that we see today has changed quite a bit
Yes, it has.
The topography of that day. Mainly this thing that we call the Dead Sea, or as Cletus calls it, the Kilt Sea.
Kilt Sea. Yeah.
But that's another subject. When I started going to Israel, it was 1998. It was my first trip. I remember going to the Dead Sea and doing the swim there. And we pulled up. We were actually right there next to Engedi, Qumran, that general area. And here's a hotel, and we walked out, and there's the water. Well, that hotel has now been totally abandoned because the water is like, a mile or two out from there. It's
Yeah.
yeah, the level of the Dead Sea is so low, even in the last few years. But what do you think the shoreline of the Dead Sea was during the time of the Qumran community? How far up do you really think that thing was?
Based on the information that we have, it was pretty close. Now, what I did was, normally when I guide groups in the Dead Sea area, I speak about the depth of the Dead Sea and the length and everything. And I'm used to guiding Europeans. So I'm used to talking metric. I actually went, because I love our listeners so much, and you know who you are, I love you. Well, I converted it to feet because some of my friends remain metrically challenged. So let's talk about the Dead Sea for a moment.
Hold on. What you're doing actually is, in going to the feet, okay, you're actually becoming more spiritual, because we can prove this. I can prove this. The metric system is based upon the number 10, and the other system, the standard system, is based upon the number 12. There were 12 tribes. There were also 12 disciples, okay? So what you did was a very spiritual thing in trying to convert yourself from metric back to what you had in the old country, New York.
In the old country. Well, I got to tell you, that's a really interesting point. One of the fun things, by the way, is when you've got a bus full of people from Europe and South America, and you've got one or two Americans, and you'll say something like, okay, it's 150 meters. And the American will say, what's that in real distance?
See?
Okay. So here,
so
I've got my handy dandy crib sheet here.
All right.
First, so let's talk about the Dead Sea. Two things. In Hebrew, it's not called the Dead Sea, as I mentioned last time, the Salt Sea. And it's not a sea, it's a lake. It's one of the largest saltwater lakes in the world. The water is 10 times saltier than regular seawater that you've experienced. In just about every group, there's always one person who, after you warn, don't taste the water, feel, well, I can do it because I'm tough. Well, you may be tough enough, bro, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
We were speaking last week. The Dead Sea is 1,380 feet below sea level. Now, Jerusalem is about 2,400 feet above sea level. So going from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea area on a bus, you'll find your ears get clogged and start popping. You're covering quite a distance. The Dead Sea is so salty because there's only one tributary that goes into it. That's the Jordan River. It's closed on the other three sides. And over all the years, the heat has caused tremendous evaporation. The water has evaporated the salt and the minerals stay. Well, how much salt is there? I came across an amazing statistic that scientists estimate there's approximately 37 billion tons of salt in that sea.
Hmm.
A lot of salt in them, our sea. Now, Israel and Jordan, to a smaller degree, have been mining that furiously over the years, which also leads to the shrinkage. The concentration of mineral is fantastic for things like acne, psoriasis, arthritis, and is actually the largest spa skin conditions in the entire world. People have been to the Dead Sea since ancient times.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the sea, or the lake, if you will, is 37 miles long.
I mean,
It's
you
nine,
just a little bit on that one. Give us that stat again.
31 miles long,
Okay.
9.3 miles wide. Its average depth is only 653 feet
Wow.
to a maximum depth of 978 feet.
Hmm.
Now, we all talk about swimming in the Dead Sea. Nobody swims.
Yeah.
We float. And it is an amazing experience where you just sit down in a kind of basic chair position, put your arms out, and you float.
Yeah.
It's a really unique, amazing feeling.
And you had that first amazing feeling on one of our tours. You had been to the Dead Sea numerous times and had only gotten your little tootsies wet. So this was like your original mikvah in the Dead Sea was with us. I have pictures, and for a small or large donation, I might be able to share those with somebody. But the problem is that I will probably have some floating around of, no pun intended, floating around of me floating in the Dead Sea too. So maybe I'll just keep those to myself. I know.
That's a pretty good idea, Mike.
Yeah. So the things about that, you have bromine. So when you're down at the Dead Sea, you sleep really, really well. Many of the soldiers that have been injured in the various wars in Israel are given treatments in the Dead Sea. They're sent down there for a weekend or so vacation, and they spend time in the spas. They spend time floating around, reading the newspaper in the Dead Sea. It's a fascinating place, but you know the I think what happens with most people, with many people, is that while being there in that area, you really forget about all the history that's in those hills
Yeah.
just above you. And in fact, if you were to look over the opposite direction onto what is now occupied territory called Jordan, we would see the mountain that Moshe was is buried on. We would be able to look down toward Tamar, which we'll talk about at some point, and see where Ishmael was. I mean, Abraham would have been in that area. The history that is in this place is kind of forgotten about because of the resort environment.
Yeah, you know, in what's interesting is once people come to Israel, if they don't go on the standard tour, if they don't go, if they don't have a friend who's going to take them around, nonsensically and not really learn anything, because there's not a lot of signage. You can read about the Dead Sea, and that's why there are licensed tour guides. I spent 3 years of my life getting certified in stuff that I had been reading about and studying for close to 30 years as an amateur. And it's what's interesting is you will never see the Bible the exact same way after being in Israel.
That's so true. People talk about, and I think one of the kind of the titles of Israel that really bug me the most is the Holy Land. Yes, it is a land that is set apart, but the word holy just doesn't quite cut it with what is going on in that place. But yes, it is a set apart place. It's not a vacation. Israel is a place that you go to experience, not
Very
only
much.
in a physical realm. I've been all over the world. I've been in 19 countries. I've been in 46, 47 of the states in the United States. There's only one place that you go to, and it is a spiritual experience. I mean, I guess if you went to Haiti, you could have a spiritual experience also, but it would be kind of the opposite spirit, maybe. But this is something. This is not a. People go sometimes with a kind of a vacation attitude, or they go with, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to take all the pictures and video, and then I'm going to bring it back to my friends. I had a pastor, this was a number of years ago, that went to Israel with in that day, VHS camera. This is talking ancient, it's amazing they haven't found something like that in one of the caves. It's that ancient. But he actually had this huge video camera. I don't know how many tapes he brought with him, but he saw the whole land through the lens of this video cam and missed the experience of the land. And this is what you hear me talk about when we get there on the bus, the jet lag time of the first day is, take some pictures. Post a few pictures on Facebook, but don't allow yourself to miss the experience of the land because you're trying to capture it on something that cannot be captured, onto a media that cannot be captured, cannot capture it with. And quickly, I said this to our son Daniel when we went over the first time, and I had said, because he loves photography also.
Yeah.
And I said, I've been all over the world and I've taken pictures. I've taken some really great pictures of different places. I said, but you can't capture Israel on film or on digital media now. And he's got a camera and he's starting, and he finally looked at me, he says, I understand what you're saying, because you look at the picture and then you look at what you're seeing and you say, this is so shallow compared to the experience of seeing it with your own eyes.
Right. It's like, when people watch old family movies and they make you sit and watch them, and you see, the emotion of, Granny's birthday party.
Yeah.
Ain't the same thing, folks.
No.
Not like being there.
No, it isn't. It isn't. Well, there's a lot about the so-called Essene community, Hanok, that we could talk about here, but I choose to talk about it while I'm in the land. There's some, and the Essene community is probably one of the most interesting to me. It is the theories, and it is, even to this day, it's theories,
right,
of who these people were, what they were doing, why they were there, what was so special about this area. Is there something that is literally buried in there? How much do you think we actually have gotten right so far? And I'm going to hit the button on that phone because Kathy's not here.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
I think we're in the general ballpark, but what we don't have is beyond Josephus, we don't have a systematic guide that says this is who this one. Josephus spoke about 4 quote unquote sects of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as it is, even amongst quote unquote zealots, the term Sicarii, quote unquote, you know, the assassins with the small daggers, you know, kind of a subgrouping of, but it's very, very, very superficial.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when we were discussing other topics, you know, a while ago, and I mentioned to you that in the Talmud, it mentions 7 types of Pharisees. Josephus just uses the term Pharisees.
Yeah.
And again, as I, you know, to my American friends, I always say, you know, when they say, well, the Republicans are going to do this or that, you know, is it a Mitch McConnell Republican? Is it a Donald Trump Republican? Nikki Haley Republican? Or Ron DeSantis Republican? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to be careful. I don't want to talk too much about American elections. We have elections coming up on Tuesday next week. You want to hear something exciting though about it?
Why?
That I didn't know?
You're gonna have another one the next Tuesday?
No. The 5th election, God forbid, but in all likelihood would be the end of the summer. What's interesting is that day, considering that Pesach starts Saturday night here, okay,
Ah.
that is the time the Korban Pesach, the Pesach sacrifice, would have been selected
Yes.
at the time of the temple, the same day that we're going to elections here. Coincidence? Maybe.
The 10th of Nisan, going back to the Exodus in Egypt, the 10th of Nisan was the day that the lamb would have been brought into the home and for 4 days examined and then killed on the evening of the 14th. So, yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know, of course, Bibi Netanyahu, in his infinite wisdom, sat down and planned that, don't you know?
He of course gave a press conference where he stated that he brought, the Abraham Accords, and he's got 4 other Muslim nations ready to sign on because it's all about him. There's, our crime minister, he's something else. And I love when people who know nothing about politics in Israel will post something on Facebook, only Bibi.
Yeah.
He should go and be in their countries, not ours.
Yeah, well, we don't need any more confusion.
Nah.
There's something about it, Hanok, of announcing you have 4 more Arab countries you're going to make peace accords with. This is to me kind of like going to the prison and saying, I've got 4 more prisoners on my side this week, and they're all on death row. Somehow that just doesn't quite cut it in my book. Well,
no.
Hey, thanks for the virtual tour, and you just kind of wet.
We'll have to pick up
again.
We'll have to pick up Ein Gedi on another time.
Yeah, and the as Paul Harvey would say, there is the rest of the story regarding Qumran, but you got to be there in the land, complaining about the sun, complaining about the heat. And Hanok and I are looking at you and saying, you should have been here before they built these shelters.
Amen.
Yeah. All right. Hey, take care. And next
You
time
too.
we talk, it will be after your elections. So who knows what kind of interesting stuff we can come up with. Or we
Meet
could
the
talk
new
about the
boss,
elections.
same as the old boss.
Got that right. All right. Take care. See
Take
you.
care, Mike. Regards. Bye-bye.